achieve equality, total decolonization, and economic freedom for all. We note that the 2024 national and provincial elections outcome resulted in the formation of a reactionary coalition government that seeks to preserve the current power of white monopoly capital in the economy, give advantage to white privilege, and undo the gains of the liberation movement. This coalition, claiming to be a government of national unity, is a design of white monopoly capital whose objective is to mask the class and race contradictions exposed by the 2024 electoral outcomes. It seeks to foreclose the possibility of the unity of all progressive forces to form a progressive government that will institute a meaningful transformation of the South African economy and society as a whole. The 2024 elections were a target of big capital and imperialist forces who sought to undermine the will of the people. They used money to propel liberal and neo-colonial political party outfits who united in the form of moonshot coalition, clearly setting themselves against liberation movement associated formations. Upon electoral defeat, the capitalist establishment realized the liberation movement forces constitute 70% majority. Instead of continuing with its Moonlight Project, which had instigated class divisions, it now advocated for the unity of all in order to mask and contain the obvious explosion against its domination. This accounts for the birth of the GNU, which does not represent the unity of the oppressed, but an empty elite coalition of predominantly liberal and neo-colonial parties. 30 years into our so-called democracy, South Africa teeters on the edge of reckoning. Economic power is still monopolized by the ruling elite, while the masses are suffocated by relentless socio-economic oppression. The vast majority are landless, denied educational opportunities, and shackled by the chains of apartheid's enduring legacy. In this urgent and volatile landscape, the progressive caucus emerges, apartheid's enduring legacy. In this urgent and volatile the National Colored Congress, NCC, and the United African Transformation, UAT, to oppose the elite pact masquerading as national unity. We pledge to remain faithful to the true aspirations of the oppressed on transformation of colonial patterns of ownership, achieving equality, justice, and total economic freedom. Accordingly, 1, we shall fight for expropriation of land without compensation for equitable redistribution. 2, we shall fight for nationalization of the commanding heights of the economy, in particular the banks and mines. 3, we shall strengthen our democracy by ensuring that the government and all captains of the ruling class are held accountable to achieve a corrupt-free society. 4, we shall fight for decolonization of legal and cultural apparatuses in society as a whole, with emphasis on an Afrocentric philosophy of law. 5, we shall fight for free, quality education, healthcare, housing, water and sanitation. 6, we shall fight for the industrial development of the African economy, attainment of peace and stability in all its nations. 7, we shall defend and promote the liberation struggle legacy of progressive internationalism. B, what is to be progressive? In the current domestic and international balance of forces, to be progressive means the following. 1, anti-capitalism. All who seek an alternative to capitalism as an economic strategy and system of life, and who are in pursuit of a society anchored by the principle of collective ownership and benefit from the means of production. 2, anti-colonialism. All who oppose colonialism, the creation of racially divided society to achieve the economic, social and spiritual exploitation of the oppressed of the world, especially as it occurred in Africa and elsewhere, beginning with the transatlantic slave trade up to the apartheid system. 3, anti-racism. All who oppose a way of life in which white people are privileged over black people in all aspects of life and perpetuate the exploitation and exclusion of black people based on the color of their skin. By black, we refer to those who were disenfranchised by the apartheid regime on the basis of their skin color. 4, anti-sexism. All who oppose the oppression of women or any person on the basis of their gender or sexuality. We shall fight for the total elimination of gender-based violence in our society. Anti-imperialist. All who oppose the domination of global capitalism and its driving countries and institutions in the world system. We shall always stand with the oppressed of the world. We reaffirm international solidarity with the people of Western Sahara, Cuba and Palestine who remain under the yoke of imperialist domination. We shall defend the Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, commonly known as BRICS, International Forum in the interest of the transformation of the global balance of forces and in favor of global South and the oppressed on the world. 6, the rule of law. We shall promote the supremacy of the rule of law. However, we are prepared to oppose any unjust law. We shall advocate for complete decolonization of our legal framework to reflect justice, equality, and an Afrocentric legal philosophy and praxis. 7, we shall defend and promote the principle of collective bargaining. Workers' rights and freedoms shall be central to our program. 8, traditional leadership. We shall defend and promote institutions of traditional leadership and customs. In the current South African Parliament, to be progressive means a refusal to be part of the government of national unity, since it is a mere executive for the management of the common affairs of the white and neo-colonial bourgeoisie. Minimum program, we shall join unite in action to ensure that the 7th Parliament achieves the following. 1, revival of the amendment of the Constitution to achieve expropriation of land without compensation for equal distribution. 2, revival of the Phala impeachment process to hold the sitting president accountable for all reported abuses of power in terms of the Constitution and the laws of this country. 3, We shall propose bills to legislate the following, among others: 1. Insourcing of security guards, cleaners, and other general workers in government departments and related entities. B. Provision of free sanitary towels for the poor. C. Nationalization of the South African Reserve Bank. D. Repeal of all apartheid laws. E. Introduction of a foreign agents bill. F. Cancelling of student debts. 4. We shall propose the following parliamentary inquiries. A. An inquiry into rand manipulation. B. Inquiry into sexual abuses of inmates in prison. And C. Conditions and remunerations of farm and domestic workers. In conclusion, although the Progressive Caucus is formed in the context of the seventh Parliament, it will not be limited to Parliament as a forum to achieve its objectives. We shall work together to broaden our collaboration and cooperation with all progressive formations of the working class and people in general. We shall mobilize and reach out to progressive formations of workers, the landless, traditional and religious leaders, and all progressive forces outside Parliament in a united action for the total liberation of all oppressed people in our country and the world. We call upon every worker, every landless South African, every young person who has been denied opportunities, and every citizen still shackled by the chains of economic oppression to rise with us. The unity you have been yearning for is happening. We stand at the precipice of a revolutionary change, a moment that will redefine our future and dismantle the remnants of apartheid's legacies. Let us ignite the spirit of resistance in every corner of our land. Let the voices of the oppressed roar louder than ever, echoing through the halls of power and across the nation. We are not merely fighting for policy changes, we are fighting for our dignity, our future, and our very existence.
Microphone to ask the question so that it's properly captured. So those want to ask questions, so number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8. Number 1.
Thank you very much. It's Habib from Radio Islam. Dr. Shlope, are you able to share any specifics on how you intend to champion the cause of the Palestinian people in Parliament? Thank you.
Number 2.
Suleiman from Radio Islam. 2 quick ones. Dr. Shlope, are you in a position to share with us some specifics in terms of how you intend to pursue constitutional reform? And a quick one for Mr. Malema. Radio Islam interviewed the Speaker of Parliament this morning. She said the 6th administration has dealt with the Pala Pala issue, and as things stand, she doesn't see any need for it to be on the agenda currently. On what basis will the Progressive Caucus be attempting to reintroduce the Pala Pala issue onto the agenda of Parliament? Thank you.
Number 3, can we request that those who spoke first switch off their microphones because they can't concurrently operate. Number 3.
Sanbona, my name is Zimbile with Bloomberg News. 3 quick questions. You mentioned that you have 102 of the seats that are in Parliament. As this caucus, you would require a 2/3 majority to amend the Constitution. So, at your calculation, how many more seats do you need? And then linked to that, is the door still open to having negotiations with parties that have now joined the GNU, which initially were part of this caucus? I'm thinking UDM, PEC, and the likes. And then on the foreign agents bill, could you just elaborate a little bit more on exactly what that entails? Thank you very much.
Number 4.
My name is Karine Duplessis. I'm from the Africa Report. I also have 2 questions. The one was kind of asked, but your battle plan with regards to reintroducing the Pala Pala matter, do you have specifics on that? Your battle plan with regards to returning the land issue to the agenda, how will you go about that? And how long do you give the Grand Coalition Government of National Unity? How long do you think it will last from your perspective, and why? Thank you.
Number 5.
Good afternoon. My name is Sisanda Moleko from the Sunday Times. This question is for Dr. Mahlatsi of the UAT. You initially were one of the founding members, essentially, of the Progressive Caucus. You then left, joined the GNU, and I think Dr. Shlope has adequately described the ideals upon which the Progressive Caucus is or stands for, rather. You then left, joined the GNU. You left the Progressive Caucus, you joined the GNU, you've now come back to the Progressive Caucus. What changed in your ideology and your stance or allegiance to what the Progressive Caucus stands for? Thank you very much.
Number 6. SABC. Dave.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Ntebo Mukoba. I'm with the SABC. The last time, I would say, the 6th administration, at some point, the governing party had around 230 seats, which then left around 170 seats or members in the opposition. This time around, we've got 102 seats. How do we envisage to have real impact this time around, as opposed to having had impact while they were around 170 seats in the last administration? With 102 seats, how effective do you see yourself? And what do you say to political parties, for instance, that are deemed to be progressive, like the PAC, by extension, I think, like maybe the UDM, who are now part of the GNU? How do you characterize them? Do you see them as people who've abandoned the real cause that you're championing? Or maybe you see them, for a lack of a better way, the sellouts? How do you characterize them? Thank you.
Number 7, SABC.
Samke Lemasego from the SABC. My question will be directed to the leader of the EFF and the leader of the official opposition and also the panelists. In the main, when you look at the program of action in the amendment of the Constitution, who are some of the political formations that you will be seeking to engage with, who are part of the Government of National Unity? Are you going to be giving an olive branch to the Estwal Liberation Movement, knowing that they themselves are particularly split on this issue of the Government of National Unity? You've got many of their MPs who are particularly not happy with the ANC entering into some sort of a working arrangement with a neoliberal party, perceivedly like the Democratic Alliance. Then secondly, to the EFF leader, in your negotiations with the ANC, you had said that you will not bring up the impeachment of the president. What has made you change tune this time around to re-bring about this particular issue on the impeachment of the president? Is it because they decided not to go into a formal coalition with the economic freedom fighters? Then lastly, to the broader Progressive Caucus, when you look at the deplorable conditions of the marginalized within the country, what will be the main program of action, particularly on the land question, despite amending Section 25 of the Constitution in Parliament, particularly when it comes to an issue that was once brought about by a former minister, and now deputy minister, on a referendum for the country on the land question? Why is a referendum not part of one of the processes that you will embark on as the Progressive Caucus? Thank you.
Number 8.
Malibongwe Matrina from the Independent Media. My question is directed to the EFF. Has the Speaker communicated officially with your party in connection with the letter that you submitted at the inaugural sitting of the National Assembly regarding the motion on Pala Pala? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, then we're now going to take responses from the leaders. Let's start with the president of the UAT, Wanda Mahlatsi, Honorable Wanda Mahlatsi. You can use the microphone. I'm sure these microphones will be able to pick up from the broadcast process.
Okay, Khotom Africa. This is Dr. Wanda Mahlatsi, the President of the United African Transformation. I have to put it clear. UAT never left the Progressive Caucus, but the UAT was invited for presentation. The ANC called us to present their case and say, we want you to participate, to be an active participant in the GNU. So the UAT never left the GNU. We have never been part of the GNU. You can go to all the archives, you can go to our media platforms. We have never announced that we are part of GNU. So let's put it clear. The UAT is still part of the Progressive Caucus, right from the beginning to date. Kanimamo.
President of the ATM.
Thank you. I'll take the question about the foreign agents. The bill seeks to drive the process of ensuring the transparency of all NGOs that are operating in our country that are receiving funding above 200,000. We want those NGOs that are involved in political, particularly for political activities, to be formally recognized as foreign agents. As they're in the country, one would view them as advancing interest of foreigners in our country. Then I'll also take the question of Palapala to state that when the ANC voted in 2022, they had a condition there, they kept emphasizing the condition that that report has been taken on judicial review. You'll recall that the president took that report to the Constitutional Court. And they were saying, pending that report being actually confirmed that it is legally flawed, they cannot continue with the process. Now, when that case or that legal review that they took to the Constitutional Court was thrown outside, meaning they could not proceed. As it stands, that report, it is still standing. It has not been set aside by any court of law. Now, if we were to go back to what the Constitution requires the National Assembly to do, particularly Section 42, subsection 3 of the Constitution, which mandates the National Assembly to scrutinize the actions of the executive. As we sit here now, Parliament, the National Assembly, has not done so. Put aside that the public protector, the other institutions may have issued reports, but the president is not elected by the public protector, not elected by the Reserve Bank, he's elected by the National Assembly. Therefore, it is on that basis that it needs to be brought back. And we'll recall that there's also court processes that we're embarking on as the ATM to set aside the report of the public protector. The EFF has gone to the Constitutional Court to set aside that decision of the National Assembly in December as a decision that is irrational. So it is on that basis that that matter must be brought back to Parliament so that Parliament does its role of oversight and not delegate that responsibility to other institutions, by the way, who are also appointed by the very same president. They need to scrutinize. Thank you.
President of the National Colored Congress. You can use that one there by you, the microphone. I hope it won't obstruct the
yeah. No, bring it. They must see.
And then you can take the microphone up, please. Yeah.
So many questions were asked. I'm going to respond to SABC. On the issue of what are we going to do about the land issue, speaking about the referendum. The Progressive Caucus is changing its first nappy today. It took Cyril almost a month just to put together the so-called GNU. There are many discussions that we're going to have about the way forward, and many disagreements will occur. And we hope to make small compromises only. This caucus is not here to make big compromises like they're doing in the so-called GNU, which will disaffect poor people in particular. And then on the second question, with regards to the olive branch that we are being spoken about to parties like the PAC and the UDM. There are conflicting views, and that is a discussion that is ongoing. Surprisingly, the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF extends an olive branch to these parties. The NCC feels that they are contaminated and that they must not be allowed back, that these people have sold our revolution. And those are the types of discussions that are ongoing, and many people will be surprised to see us at this table. But in the struggle for equality, for shared ownership, and true freedom, these are my comrades. Let me assure you that this is not a marriage. It probably won't last a lifetime. But this is what is needed by the poor right now, because the GNU is not a GNU, it's a GUN. That's how you spell gun, Mr. Steenhuisen. It's pointing at the aspirations of the poor, at the hopes and the dreams and the lives and the food of people who need it. It's a sellout. I want to answer one more question with regards to Phala Phala. Phala Phala, in our view, was the get out of jail card for Cyril Ramaphosa. That is why he was so desperate to have the DA included in this GUN, which is destined to kill the poor. Thank you.
President of the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Thank you very much. The Palestinian question has been championed in Parliament even before, where we sponsored a motion that was adopted by Parliament advocating for the removal of Israeli embassy because we cannot share a territory with murderers. That resolution stands, and it is the responsibility of Parliament to ensure that the executive implement the Parliament resolution, and they will not stop until that matter has been attended to. You should know that the DA it's a product of an apartheid system which has always been in cahoots with the Israeli states. It's a relationship that the Israelis are ashamed of, but you can be guaranteed that Israel provided weapons during apartheid to the apartheid regime in exchange for minerals. The biggest trade Israel had in the 70s and 60s was with South Africa, because South Africa needed the arms and Israel needed money and investors. So the GNU, being a product of that arrangement of apartheid beneficiaries, there is in no way it will fight for the total liberation of the people of Palestine. So the Palestinian question is threatened by this government of national unity, because the DA it's a beneficiary of the National Party's government, and the DA has got remnants, including Freedom Front of apartheid, the people who were advocating for the genocide of African people. So it's not going to be an easy task. The progress we made on Palestine in South Africa has been reversed by this elite pact, but that doesn't mean we should not continue with the fight for the total liberation of the people of Palestine. Phala Phala is not a dead issue. She cannot communicate with us through the media. We didn't communicate with her through the media. If this is how she wants to start as a speaker, she's going to have a very difficult time. Phala Phala has been submitted to her through a formal letter, and she will have to follow the parliament processes to respond to us. The parliament, the 7th parliament, can deal with any matter. There's no way someone should say this matter was dealt with by the 6th parliament, therefore 7th parliament can't deal with it. If it means bringing it afresh, where we have to constitute a new panel to make investigations, we will use the previous panel's recommendations as evidence to the new panel and then come back to vote again. It is so opportunistic for DA to say it will not vote for Phala Phala impeachment because of VBS. When we're voting in favor of Phala impeachment report, the VBS story was there. They are just using, we voted together even when there was a VBS story. It's not like now there is a new story which is going to disturb them from voting with the EFF. They are using the VBS to abandon their own earlier stance for expediency. But equally, they are using Phala to hold Ramaphosa with scrotum. Because every time he tries to move, they are going to say Phala. Every time he tries to move, Phala. That's why they say, no, won't vote with these people. But they don't have a reason why they can't vote with us. They say, no, VBS is a story that is far bigger than what Phala is, and therefore we can't vote with them. That is an excuse. We voted together with the DA on Phala even when there was VBS story. So there is no story of a VBS that can make the DA change their mind. They are just being opportunistic, but also wanting to use that issue to blackmail Ramaphosa. Any matter that required two-thirds majority, even in the past, before the arrival of MK, we were 44. We are now 102. But we got Parliament to vote in favor of amendment of Section 25 to allow the expropriation of land without compensation. That resolution required two-thirds, and we did not have the numbers even at that time. But we were able to get those numbers. We will do the same even with this new Parliament. Now that we are 102, it means we are not looking for serious numbers to increase and then get this matter in the right direction. The PAC is already speaking about expropriation of land without compensation right inside cabinet. So we might not be together in the progressive caucus, but there might be issues that brings us together. And therefore, from time to time, if we share common grounds on any matter, it will not say, no, because they are not in the GNU, we can't vote with them. As long as we agree that this is the way to go. We voted for land expropriation without compensation with the ANC, and we voted for Phala with the DA. It didn't mean we were in an alliance with any of the two. It was issues that were common, and we're agreeing on those matters. UDM, PAC, NCC leadership is right. They sold out, and we are extremely offended by that, because even when they were abandoning us, they never came back to us to say, count us out. That is an act of cowardice. A genuine, legitimate leader, once they change their minds, they have to come back and say, guys, don't count on us. We've eaten hot food from the other side, and therefore we're unable to continue with the agenda. When they want to come back, that discussion will take place with them at that moment. But for now, we are extremely disappointed by their actions, where they put a preference of blue lights over the lives of our people. Many of them, for sure, they realized in the next election, they are likely not to come back. So they must eat on their way out. That's why they accepted certain things. It's the same thing with Section 25. Where will you get the numbers? We'll do what we did even in the past to get the numbers on our side. The GNU will not last long. I give it a year. If it goes beyond a year, it will be 2 years, because after the ANC conference, it will collapse. Remember, the DA said, we are prepared to work with the ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa. So the ANC conference is going to remove Cyril Ramaphosa, whether he likes it or not. It's his second term. He's not coming back. So the most likelihood, if they survive a year, after the ANC conference, they will not succeed, because like province of Gauteng, look at it. It has completely rejected the DA and went on to constitute government without the DA. And we're going to make sure that that government of Gauteng works. We're going to support it, because not to support the government of Gauteng is to support the DA. So if the Gauteng government fails, then the doomsayers are going to say, you see, if you don't work with the DA, you are going to fail. So we are not in an alliance with them. We're not voting for them for anything. We are going to vote for their budget, for whatever is required from us in order to defeat the DA and demonstrate to the national leadership that you could have done the same. You don't need the DA for you to survive with the numbers you have. As long as you put progressive proposals on the table, you can still govern without having 50+1, because no one won elections. No one said we must work together. The story that the electorate said we must work together, it's a fiction. Someone just created it. They did not vote for anyone. So if no one is voted for, it means from time to time we must consult one another and get consensus from amongst the parties that are voted into power. The ANC missed that opportunity and went into bed with murderers who are still to account for the killings of our people. When we negotiated with the ANC, we never said we will not bring Palapala. Remember, in a year, 5 years before, when we went, the condition was that the president must be removed. So we said, we are not coming with that condition. Let's deal with issues. Because we knew, after we have agreed, along the other progressive forces, the issue of the president is going to come. It doesn't have to be a deal breaker. Because if we had used it as a deal breaker, the ANC will be saying we did not negotiate with them because they came with a deal breaker and we could not budge from that level. We said, okay, let's leave that. Even land expropriation and all of that, let's leave them. Let's talk about what are the immediate interests for our people. Let's even leave positions for that matter to look at what can be discussed and agreed upon in the immediate to liberate the poor of the poorest. Still, that got rejected. And then they went back to the meeting of the ANC and said EFF insulted them and all of that as a way of trying to persuade the NEC not to look at the EFF direction. So Cyril has never been a condition in exchange for ministerial positions. We never said that. We've always emphasized that the interest of our people should come first, and the rest of the other issues will deal with them. That's why we, even before the election of the president, we presented Palapala to the speaker immediately after she got elected, so that those who are voting for that president, they should know that there is this dark cloud hanging over the head of that president. I think those are the issues that I will respond to, DP.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you, CIC. There are a couple of other questions that are remaining. Somebody asked about the possibility of the president holding a referendum on the issue of land, right? My understanding, there is an act of parliament, it's called the Referendum Act. I can't remember the exact act, in terms of which the initiative to have a referendum is taken by the president. But the referendum, remember, is binding. It has binding consequences, unlike a plebiscite. So there is no way he will go down that route, we know, because he knows what the answer is. I would like to there was a public participation exercise. People overwhelmingly voted in favor of expropriation of land without compensation. That was the outcome of that public participation exercise. We know that because it was raised about 3 weeks ago by one of the comrades from EFF, it was Comrade Mkhalipi, who asked what happened to that report, which was filed in 2017, in terms of which the public voted overwhelmingly in favor of expropriation of property without compensation. The answer was shocking. This was the answer from one of the ANC parliamentarians. The answer was, we are the lawmakers who are not bound by what the public wants. That was the answer given to us during the orientation 3 weeks ago by an MP of the ANC. That to us made it abundantly clear that the issue of land is not on their agenda, right? So we know out there, remember we're representing 70% of the electorate, right? We may be just 102 seats in parliament, but our people who voted for us, we have 70% waiting outside, and we are here to execute their mandate, and we are convinced we are going to grow as a force. The other question related to GNU, whether or not, I think CIC has dealt with it, whether or not it's going to last. The GNU lacks political legitimacy. If you lack legitimacy, what happened to apartheid? It was around for years, but it collapsed. Obviously, GNU is not going to be around for a very long time. Indeed, I would associate myself with the remarks made by CIC. It would be miraculous if they would survive longer than a year. Their policies are diametrically opposed, especially ANC and Democratic Alliance, when it comes to policies relating to the poor people. We all know, for example, the ANC has introduced a number of social grants and also the issues of minimum wage, and the DA is vehemently opposed to that. So we know they will not last. That marriage is not going to last. The other question related to, CIC has dealt with it, related to organizations that were progressive once upon a time, which are now part of the government of national unity, like the PAC, right? We are going to, they are not here for obvious reasons, because they are part of the government of national unity, and we are very clear in our view. Anyone who is part of the government of national unity is contaminated. That is a fact. They are contaminated. But obviously we will engage them. We're not going to throw the baby with the bathwater. They are contaminated, but should circumstances permit, we will continue to engage them as and when it is necessary. But for now, they are part of the government of national unity. There is an excitement about the Blue Lights Brigade. Let them enjoy the blue lights for now. Thank you. I think DP
Thank you very much. Can we then take the last round of hands to ask questions and then get the responses, and we'll then close the press conference. Number one is the person wearing a green jacket. I think that is the only description we can give. Number two.
Start with the call.
Number three.
They were going to start with the call.
Number one.
Mr. Malema, the President from Network 23 speaking. So, according to the allegations by Mr. Matotsi, he claims that the EFF did receive 6 million rand or millions of rand
nothing to do
through Sagema Project Staff Company. Will you please respond to that allegation, and also the allegations from Daily Maverick that has also recently resurfaced that the bank court of the company was used in places where you were also present? Thank you.
Number two.
Covered.
Number three.
Igama ubalungile mkhize from Emirates Power Podcast. Nginibuzo nje embili kuphela. Dr. Shop, ngisacela ukubuza la, in terms of rural development, making like ukusiza amakhosi ukuthi to utilize the land effectively, to participate in the economy effectively. What are the plans? What are the programs in place? To Babumanen, Mansaka, when it divisa ama stations, ama colonizers, less at la pam with parliament Nashia Ranjan, and what is the plan of this key because
yeah. Okay.
Those were the only hands that we had for the second round. Can we then allow the party leaders to then respond, and with the view that they'll also be making the closing remarks in terms of the areas of emphasis that must come out of this? UAT?
Yes.
You cover UAT?
Sure.
ATM?
Thank you. I think what we need to emphasize is that there's a narrative that is peddled out that any party that is not part of the GNU does not want progress in our country. It is a country it is a party that is full of anarchists and stuff like that. What we need to emphasize, number one, also there's this issue whereby the parties that are seated here are pro-amendment of the Constitution in some regards. For example, the question of land expropriation without compensation. And that has been used as a narrative to demonize such actions as anti-constitution. Whereas there are also parties in that GNU that also want amendments to the Constitution. For example, the IFP has long called for the amendment of the Constitution to deal with the death penalty case. But that narrative is not used by them. So we just wanted to clarify that amendments to the Constitution is constitutional itself because the Constitution provides for such. The second thing that we want to clarify as well, it is a question of having an opposition in Parliament, because the manner in which our democracy is founded, it is actually encouraging effective opposition or opposition in Parliament. Now you find that any party that is not part of the GNU, in fact, the narrative that is there, it is as if all parties must be part of the GNU, and no questions are asked what then happens to the principle of having an opposition in Parliament to guard against any abuse of power by the executive, which is evident now when you see how the DA is changing its tune, because previously the DA has been calling out the ANC for abusing their power when it comes to having the numbers to vote for issues. It is the very same DA now that is saying, in other words, it is going to protect Mr. Ramaphosa, even though there is wrongdoing by the side or by the view of the former Chief Justice on the issue of Pala. So those are the things that the media needs to report on, that a progressive caucus is more than necessary for that principle of having opposition in our democracy. Number two, we aren't anti-constitutionalism, but what we want, it is what is provided for by the Constitution, which includes amendments. Thank you.
NCC?
No question was posed at me, Chief, but I will answer. I will answer because I'm offended. I'm not Julius Malema's attorney. But the VBS issue comes up at every press conference. I noticed the SAPC asked their hand, put their hand down because they were covered by the question from the gentleman in green. You know, no one ever asks the DA how much did he benefit from Steiners. Here in the city of Cape Town, 8 people are before the court for 243 million rand fraud in the city of Cape Town. The city manager has hidden the reports. The speaker is part of the cover-up. The mayor has lied in council. But the DA never gets questioned by the media. It's as if people of color or people who demand equality are being persecuted by the very same media that is supposed to be everybody's watchdog. You people really should go and read your oath. Really should ask, what am I doing here? Am I here in my capacity as a free-thinking journalist? Or am I here to perpetuate the wrongs that are going on out there? Has this man taken anything from VBS? I don't know. Has the DA taken anything from Caucus? We all know they did. But you don't push that narrative as hard. And as a man of color, who when he falls in a taxi, it's in the newspaper, it's offensive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I also want to defend CIC. There is a reason why we call this press conference. It was to launch the Progressive Caucus. We did not call it for any other purpose. And I think the media must stop abusing us. If we create a platform for a particular purpose, we are here for that. If you want to interview Comrade Malema on anything, he will decide when and whether or not to accept that. But don't abuse the fact that we have called you for something else, and then you take that opportunity, you turn it around. I am also offended. I regard that as an abuse. We didn't call you for that. So I would like to protect him. I have every right to protect any comrade who's being abused and is part of the Progressive Caucus. So please, such questions are offensive. I was asked a question, I just want to take the floor and finish. I was asked a question by a journalist, a lady from Pietermaritzburg, who said, yes, about rural development, the role of the kings. Yes, we take land very, very seriously. Those of us who have small pieces of land, like myself, you should come and see what we are doing. We take farming and imparting of skills very, very, very seriously. If one can take you back to long before 1652, how did the African people live? We practiced subsistence farming, and the role that was played by the kings was significant in that regard. There is not a single African who cannot farm. There is not a single African who cannot hunt. There is not a single African who cannot feed himself. I always say, for example, when people are talking with reference to Ingonyama Trust land in KZN, saying that it's fertile land, you have heard this old lady, saying that it's fertile land and it's not being used. I challenge people who say that, go there and see. People who live in those areas are not dependent on 350 rand per month, right? They can feed themselves through subsistence farming. So the answer is simply this. We will train our people, we will capacitate our people, but I am convinced almost every African, farming is in our blood. That's what we did, right, long before we were colonized. It's something that we enjoy. It is something that is close to our heart. Remember, an African is brought to this land, right? We live on this land, and even when we die, we are buried. That's why we are never cremated, so that there is connection between the land. When you are born, when you are surviving, you are still living, and when you are dead, you go back to the soil, you are planted. That's African life. So I'm not worried about kings. They are here in our midst. We know we are farmers with all of them. Was there any other question? Finally, on section 25, I just want to echo what my brother from ATM, Comrade Zungisa, said. Whenever you raise issues of land, an impression is created that we're a group of thugs. We're not thugs. We are law-abiding citizens. We are politicians here. We have every right to criticize the Constitution, which is basically not speaking to the people. Remember, we're representing 70% of the people that we're representing. We may have just 102 seats, but we know our mandate. Our people feel that the Constitution is not addressing their needs. It is not addressing their expectations, right? So we have every right to call for that Constitution to be amended. There is nothing unconstitutional about that. In fact, there are some leaders, including the leader of the Freedom Front and including the leader of the Progressive, the PA, Abahambe, what's Patriotic Alliance, Abahambe. I mean, those parties are calling for the return of the death sentence. The death sentence is unconstitutional. That is what the court decided in this country. Now, those are the leaders. You should be asking them. Here is the Constitution. How can he be calling for the death sentence to be imposed without calling for the Constitution to be amended. Right? So we can assure you everything we do will be within the law. We are aware of the law, we are fully aware of it, but we will continue to canvass that the law must be changed to the extent that it does not meet the needs and address the aspirations of our people. And that is democracy. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
President.
Thank you very much, DP. Let me deal with the issue of the Phala issue. The conclusion then was that there was an abuse of the majoritarian approach of the ANC. Instead of looking into issues, they just used the majority to dismiss the issues. And now today, the ANC does not have majority. What will be an excuse from the DA to say we did not vote for Phala because the ANC abused its majority? The ANC does not have majority. What made us get defeated last time was not substance, was numbers. Exactly. Numbers have tilted now in favor of all those who were voting for the impeachment process of the president. So it can no longer be an excuse that there is an abuse of Phala majority. The statue here, DP, if I'm not wrong, we actually put a motion here in Parliament that that statue in front of Parliament must be removed. And the ANC voting with the DA and them, they voted against removing that statue. No, the one that is in front of Mandela. The horse one is Botha, Louis Botha. We're saying, how do you put Louis Botha statue in front of Mandela statue? And these guys refuse. If you remember, and if you are around, we tried to remove that thing at night. It's too heavy. It's very difficult. So the program hasn't stopped. We are still trying to find ways of dealing with that arrangement. The ANC in Tshwane actually went to put a fence on Caucus statue, a fence and protect the ANC council in Tshwane, protected Caucus statue. And we had a plan. The problem is that after we put a chain, and then the truck was on the other side to pull, Metro Police came. So we disappeared. After we disappeared, they realized, no, there is a problem here. They went to put a fence, making it very difficult for anyone who wants to remove that statue, legally or illegal. That's how much they are in love with the colonizers. The last point, Judge, I'm not scared of this. I'm the one who spoke about VBS. I'm not scared about this VBS story. There's no Matodzi affidavit. That is a sponsored propaganda that is aimed at intimidating and defocusing the EFF. I will never be defocused by VBS. I will never be intimidated by VBS. I can tell you seated here, and I'm repeating myself, and I'm so disappointed that Sam Kelwe doesn't defend me. I sat down with him. I gave him, it was a panel of them. I said, ask me any question you want to ask me. They asked me the same things that you are trying to create an impression that they are new. Those questions were raised at that time and facts were never found. No leader of the EFF received a VBS money. No EFF received a VBS money. Matodzi never alleges in his affidavit that the money was given to the EFF or the leadership of the EFF. In Matodzi's affidavit, which is unbelievable and we dispute, is that the money was given to Sgamega. As Sgamega money, which we never disputed, that Sgamega confirmed it received the money, to an extent that Sgamega was called by the curators of VBS. And Sgamega reached an agreement with the curators of VBS to pay back the loan they took from VBS. That loan has since been paid. So there is no one, even in Sgamega, who has eaten the money of Gogos. They've paid back that money back to the VBS. Try something else. You want to talk about the cut? In the meeting where Samkel and them were interrogating me and thinking they've got facts like you are doing, unless you just arrived from Ukraine, you will not know what are the issues that transpired before. They even made me to take out my wallet in search of the cut you are talking about. They couldn't find it on me. What makes you want to raise the same issue that you probed me, not through questions, literal search, and the cut you are talking about, you could not find in my position? Try something else. VBS will not work. We're not here for the first time. We've been tested before with unfounded allegations which their aim was to achieve a political end. The abuse of state and the state resources has never intimidated us. There's no one who can raise VBS and silence me. The only thing that is going to silence me from raising matters in this country is death. Outside death, nothing will stop me, nothing will intimidate me. I'm not scared of Ramaphosa and all of his cahoots. Let them bring it on. We are ready to fight them. And if they want to arrest, we told them then, this thing you are raising in the Matodzi evidence was even there before people got arrested for VBS. Why didn't they arrest us then? You cannot put any man of the VBS in our pockets or in the pockets of the VBS. That's what Advocate Dalimpofu was saying. He never said the EFF received money. He was saying, let's assume that affidavit of Matodzi is true. Even with the version of Matodzi, there's nowhere where he says he gave the EFF money, but there's nowhere where Matodzi says EFF solicited a bribe or asked for a donation. He says he offered, if we're to believe that particular affidavit. And he doesn't say he has donated money to the EFF account or to the leadership of the EFF. He now speaks about taking the money into Sgamega, which he's got contract with, and it is on the basis of that contract that the curators accepted the settlement of Sgamega. So the matter is closed. But because you have nothing against the EFF and you want to intimidate it going into this 7th parliament, you go to the dustbin, thresh literal journalism, you start searching for things that are non-existent in an attempt to silence us. Our keeping quiet on this matter is not because we don't have answers, but we are just tired of answering nonsense. Every time we give you facts, you work against the facts because you want to achieve a particular end. The leader of NCC is right. Steinhoff is there. With so many billions disappeared, DA never get questioned. Musimaimani received a car from Steinhoff. That matter is still not spoken about. Musimaimani received a house from Steinhoff. That matter is not spoken about. The white corruption in this country is not spoken about. You are trying to use us in relation to VBS to give corruption a black face, which we refuse. You are protecting white corruption in this country at the expense of the progressive people of South Africa to silence them. Even in the Matodzi issue, there is Communist Party that is alleged to have requested, EFF they say in their own paper, never requested. The Communist Party requested the money. The ANC requested the money and gave, Zwelim Kise gave an account of a different company. There they implicate them directly and say they requested and even told us where to pay. The EFF did not request. If anything, we offered to donate to the EFF. But those that are recipient of such donation, which we dispute, are now being attacked as if they are the one who went to solicit a bribe. The ANC in Limpopo, the biggest beneficiary of VBS because they send their municipalities to go and put money in VBS in exchange for gratuity. So that is not spoken about. Again, Polokwane municipality put money in VBS. None of you has asked the question who was the mayor when Polokwane was putting money in VBS. The mayor was Minister of Justice at that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chief and all the leaders of political parties, members of the media, Thank you very much for attending the first press briefing of the Progressive Caucus here in Parliament. We constantly will interact with members of the media. You can reach the political parties individually and separately if you want to make further engagements and interviews. Thank you very much for attending the press briefing. The press briefing from here is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
You can't call them one thing next thing the other.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know how you remain so calm all of the time.
They are abusing us. They got
the judiciary.
It's an acquired skill.
What's that? I didn't want to picture you.
These people are full of shit.
I wanted to know, what's the best way to contact you?
Will contact our speaker, Mr. Zen. He's here. I don't like to take interviews. I refuse. Unless if there is something specific, I prefer to call a press conference, never